So I am done with this book, and I thought I'd do a flip through. I mean, I should glue this because it's been banged up a bit, but that's a project for another day. It is finished. I've used up all the pages, sort of, and yeah, it served me well, but now's the time to say goodbye. So I started here by, making a front page that was supposed to fire me up for this interview I was going to for a position at work, and I got the position, so it worked. Yeah, so I don't know. This is from Kerrang magazine, a picture of Ghost, and this is a quote from Tobias Forge. And this is the May monthly booklet with my next action spreads, and it's all done. As you can see, it's not pretty at all. It's just what I did. And this week I was ill. I had, what's it called? It's like, there are crystals in your ear that come loose and make you dizzy for a few days. And that's what happened. So this week just nothing happened because I couldn't get out of bed. It's not dangerous. It's just really uncomfortable. So that's a booklet. That's just for planning, tracking, nothing fancy. And then journaling for May. So I painted backgrounds beforehand so that I could write on them and put washi tape and draw and paint. And this bird represents how I felt physically at the time. And this represents my husband buying geraniums, is that the word? Which is, in Sweden, it's considered an old lady flower, but he's starting to think, oh, they're not so bad. So I wanted to document that. And I drew a lot of tarot cards to learn a new deck at the beginning of May. So I journaled about that, and I drew this limequat plant that my husband bought. Yeah. And in the mornings, sometimes I journaled and wrote about tarot cards, and sometimes I painted something. And this, I just doodled, and then I realized, well, maybe this woman thing entity should be in my fantasy world. So I started journaling about that. So just using your journal for random stuff can help you think of things that you then want to use somehow. So just let your mind wander. At least if you're a nay user. Extroverted intuition. Extroverted intuition. I really like this kind of pattern, just doodling it when instead of being on my phone, I guess. So that's a tip. You can do things like that instead of scrolling mindlessly. This was, we watched the series Pillars of the Earth. So I was inspired to do this, what's it called? Well, this thing that's in a church, whatever. And then this was lying on the kitchen floor because, well, I dropped it after I cut out some ghost picture. So I put it there just for fun, like a contrast, because it's very religious. They're building a church, so. This is another instance where I drew a picture and then that gave me ideas for my fantasy world. So I wrote about that. And here I was reminded by a song I wrote when I was like 14 or something, and I wrote down the lyrics. So it's just, everything is just random. More tarot cards. A recipe for carrot cupcakes, because I've found this recipe that's really, really good, and I suddenly realized, what if they take it down, or it, you know, what if I lose it? So I wrote it down, and I was going to make them for my husband's birthday, and then I didn't, so another instance of doodling this kind of pattern instead of scrolling through social media. This is really not like me. This kind of pattern, this kind of aesthetic. I originally planned something else, and then it just didn't work. And then I doodled this on the evening before I got sick with the crystal thing in my ear. So I don't know if this was some kind of premonition that I am not feeling my best. Because this is what it felt like. Whoa. When I woke up the next morning. Tarot card again. A song that that really left an impression on me. So I just wrote the name of it and the band name. And I started drawing Four Horsemen, but I ended up abandoning it after the first one. Again, I just drew my hand. And I asked my husband, what is the hand holding? And he said, did he say an orange? Or did he actually say the sun? Because I think he said an orange. But then it looked like the sun, and I had another idea for my fantasy world, so I journaled about that, about this thing they have where they think that the sun is pushed over the sky, across the sky, by a giant hand, the great hand. And here I'm journaling about not liking the book. A lot of my journaling has to do with the book I'm journaling in, or my bullet journal or planning. It's just, yeah, it's on my mind a lot. And here is, well, in Sweden there's this crossword every Saturday morning. It's a music crossword on the radio. So normally I do it online, but when we're in the cabin, we do it on paper. So I glued it in here. And this is to represent that we sat outside by the fire. And here I wrote, on the fridge at our cabin, we have fridge poetry, and I wrote a poem about ghosts on the fridge. So I wrote it down in case we want to rearrange the words, but I quite like the poem I wrote, so I put it here. Wasting paper, basically, is just, I drew the King of Potions in my tarot deck, and just didn't have a lot to say about that. Um, journaling about crafting, and these are my 3 favorite riffs. So there are probably more, but these are the ones I always think of, so I wrote them down. Eye of the Witch with King Diamond, Electric Eye with Judas Priest, and Paranoid with Black Sabbath. And the 6 strings are, well, they represent the 6 strings of a guitar. Here I was still a bit sick, so I drew this to signify or show how it felt. And then that gave me an idea again for my fantasy world, so I journaled about this plant that they have. Yeah. And this spread I really like. I mean, most of these didn't turn out, I mean, it's just random. But I do like this one. I like this one. I like her because it's so, I don't know, soft. I like this one. I seldom do this kind of structured thing. So, yeah. But I don't sweat it if I don't like a spread. I just turn the page. A few quotes and beer labels that I liked. Quotations that me and my husband use a lot. Or journaling about my planner and how it's not working. And this is just planner plans, you know. How am I going to use my book? And then later I drew all these sort of swirls because I had nothing to do. Again, a picture that represents how I felt physically. And I have this language that's not really a language in my fantasy world. It's actually a mind song, but someone tries to make a written language out of it, and this is sort of what it would look like. And this is the sea where the people live who use this language, and there's this island that, well, long story. Regular journaling and tarot cards. And here I was starting to feel that something's happening. The interview for my job position was coming up, but I just felt like a chapter is ending and a new one is beginning. So this was that spread to signify the change. Some journaling about that. Tip in from a magazine. Again, this represents the old me dying, and yeah, something new coming. And when I woke up on the day of the interview, I had this song in my head called Amazing. It's not a song that I particularly like, but it felt like it was very upbeat and sort of, it made me feel good. So I listened to it again and again and again before the interview, and the interview went well. And after the interview, I opened a random magazine to, you know, I asked, like Bibliomantics, I asked, how did it go? And this is the picture that my finger landed on. So, yeah, it went well. The magazine thought so too. This is also one of the pages that I like. Yeah. I like pages where it's not covered in text. There are pictures and sort of, I don't know, borders and frames. Yeah, journaling about Eurovision. And I started using these strips from maps as decoration. And then, here too, then I was inspired to make a map for my fantasy world, which I did. Well, here, we'll come to it. Yeah, just regular journaling. Sometimes I write songs that are stuck in my head. And here we have the map, or the beginnings of it. These are just pieces of paper I've used to mop up excess paint when I'm painting in the book. And I realized it sort of looks like land masses. And then I filled in the blue to represent water. And I photographed it and put it on my iPad and, let's see, and drew the map. So these are the same shapes as this, just cleaned up a bit. Then I realized that it was supposed to be this orientation, but it looks a bit too much like, I don't know, India and perhaps, I don't know. It looks vaguely like Europe and Asia, and that's not right. So I might turn it around and use it this way. Use this orientation instead. Anyway, onwards. Cutouts from a gardening magazine. My first packing list of the year for our cabin. I wanted to document that. And we planted some other flowers. This I painted based on, I made the background and then it looked like mountains and fish, so I just filled that in. And here we come to June. So first the booklet and my trackers. And then my journaling. And June started with bottling beer. My husband brews beer, so I journaled about that. And this is just existential rambling, I think. This too. And I started peeling off things from bottles to add in my journal. I thought this label was kind of pretty. And I was drinking mojito on the balcony, and it was starting to get really warm. The year's first bath outside, bathing in the local stream. The 4th of June, that's really early. And these are a few plants that my husband bought and planted. This is a ghost quote, and I wrote down some summer sounds that I like. High-flying swifts, fire planes, you know, airplanes that check for fires, and bumblebees. Journaling about how warm it is, or hot rather. This one I really like, and I sort of like the whole spread. I had this thought that Death and the Maiden, why can't they be the same person? So I drew a picture of that. And this is just... I'd started watching sketching school? No, school... It's a channel on YouTube about sketchbooks. Sketchbook school, perhaps. And I really like it. It's so inspiring. So I started just doodling. And these are a couple of garden decorations that we put in the garden outside our cabin. Really cute fox. More doodling. And here I just asked my husband who his three favorite blues singers were. Top 3. And then he said, well, Robert Johnson isn't even on the list because he's his own kind of, you know, he's the obvious one, the god. So the other 3 were Son House, Mississippi John Hurt, and Otis Rush. And then Blind Willie Johnson as well. So it's a list of 5 singers that are the top 3. Just a random face. Another face and a quote from my husband about blues singers. And here I journaled about, well, I made this page to sort of represent fairies, like these colors I thought were fairy-like, and then I started brainstorming about fairies in my fantasy world, so I wrote about that. And this is also to do with my fantasy world, a character, a vampire called Deminessa. And we saw our first bat for the year at the cabin, so that's why at first I drew the bat, and then I drew her, because vampires, bats, same thing. I really like this spread. I like turquoise and brown, sort of coppery brown together. It's really pretty. It looks like really old, I don't know, patina, you know. More journaling about my fantasy world. I just drew this flower randomly, and then I thought, maybe this is one of their, it's like a, sort of like an opium, what's it called? The flower that you, never mind, poppy. So I made this my own drug flower, and these are like tweezers that the elite, people with a lot of money, use to pick these petals from the flower, and then they snort it. They pick the no petal. What did I say? I mean what's it called? Anyway, this yellow thing in the middle of the flower. They pick it, they crush it with their tweezers, and then they snort it. Another thing from my world, a tattoo that people in a convent use. Here I got the job. So I journaled about that, I guess. More random journaling. Another fairy page, obviously. And these are bookmarks from Well, they're not from my childhood, but because I gave them away, my own bookmarks, but I bought new ones. Not new ones, second-hand ones, used ones, but the same same pictures, because I wanted them. So I'm using them. I'm trying, actually, this year, I'm trying to de-stash by using everything, all my crafting materials. It's taking a while, but it's a good sort of goal, because, I mean, I have too much stuff, so I have to get rid of it. I have to use it up. Here I journaled about, well, I wrote a speech for a relative who was celebrating something. And after that I was tired and sort of maudlin and, what's it called, like emotional. And I drew this stranded mermaid and a tired person. And then I felt better, so I drew this. And this is just some doodling during a meeting. Brainstorming. More brainstorming for my fantasy world. I started drawing tarot cards again because I'd sort of fallen off the wagon. And now we have reached Midsummer's Eve. What? I can't learn how to say this. So I don't know if I like this. I like it in other people's books when they glue in mementos, but I don't know. I'm not completely sold on the concept in my own books, so I don't know. Doodling. And I got a present, a book, a notebook with this picture on the front with a fairy, an olive fairy. I don't remember the name of the artist, but I drew my own version. And this is just a dyed piece of paper that I thought maybe I can use these as more maps. If I photograph this and do the same thing as I showed you just now. More doodling. Journaling. A note from my husband that I wanted to document. He wrote a song and he wanted me to print the lyrics. And finally, my first jab, so I drew a little picture of that, and I journaled while I waited for my turn, hoping not to, what's it called when you lose consciousness afterwards? Faint. I hope not to faint, so I journaled about that, about not wanting to faint. In the evening we had sushi on the balcony. It was really warm and lovely. And these are the chopsticks, or the thing, you know, the chopsticks were in these. And I just drew a pair of eyes to use up the final bit of real estate in my book, because this I'm going to glue to the back. So I will have filled the whole thing.